Kit Edit. We're now going to get into the Kit Edit screens, which essentially sets up the note numbers for all of the pads. Now again, if you call up a kit, like the Addictive Drums kit or the Roland TD30, the note numbers would automatically be loaded. And you wouldn't have to do any of this editing. That's the same with the pad types. Again, in review, by knowing your pad type and knowing the sound module that you're plugging into, 90% of the editing should be done for you, and the DITI is kind of turnkey. But we're getting into the nitty-gritty here so that you can do your own programming. So let's say I want to assign some sounds to this pad. So first thing I would do, I would press the edit button. And on the top, it's going to say, if I held it down, it goes to the first screen, which is channel. On the top, it says 2A. That's the pad that I'm actually working on. If I wanted to go to a different pad, I would either have to do one of two things. Either I would change it here to, let's say, 3, or once all the pads have been assigned, I simply go to automatic, so that when I'm in edit mode, if I jump to pad 8, to pad 3, to pad 2, it just instantly gets there. So this is where the automatic training becomes really, really easy and fast. So the very first Kit Edit screen is channel. And channel 10 is the normal drum channel, but it could be any channel. Again, you change the channel by moving the up, and it goes to 11. Move it down, it goes to 9. There are 16 channels in MIDI. Whenever I make any kind of change, you see an asterisk to the right. That means it's an edit. As soon as I hit enter, it loads in the channel. Now I move over to the right. And now you're going to see the word slot. And what this is where you assign the note number. And you'll notice that 38 is a general note number for snare drum, and it is in slot 1. Why do we call it slot? Because the DITI can play up to 32 different notes on one pad, plus do some other crazy special functions. So if I wanted to have multiple notes on the pad, I would need to assign each one of the slots to a different number. Now, the note numbers are on the right, and they go from 0 to 127, and then after 127 comes the word off, which means that when you hit the pad, you get silent. Why would you want silent? Because silent is a cool thing when you're playing an alternate 8-note pattern and you want the 6th beat to be silent, but yet you want the rhythm of the pattern to go over and over again. Then we have something called start, which is a sequence start command, a sequence continue command, a sequence stop command. That means that you can assign a function to the pad so that when you strike it, it starts and stops your external sequencer. Then we have something called alternate reset 1 and alternate reset 2. And what this means is that when you're playing an alternate note pattern, once you get to this location on the slot, it will reset back to the beginning, that's alternate reset 1, or to the second slot, either the first slot or the second slot of the alternate pattern. It also has a secondary function, and that is if you set up an alternate reset in slot number 1, it becomes a global reset for all the pads. It's a really powerful feature, and you'll be using it all the time if you're using alternate note patterns, and we'll be demonstrating that later. Then we have an alternate freeze. And what a freeze does, again, if you have it in slot 1, all the alternate patterns stop and become frozen in that spot until you strike the pad again, and then it starts the alternating padding all over again. Then we have kit advance. Yes, you can assign a pad to change kits. Kit advance and kit backwards. And then we have a special function that's called choke on. When we start getting into how to program choking cymbals, you will see that by assigning slot 4 to choke, that you can choke any pad, dampen any pad by simply assigning this slot to choke. Those are the slots. Now we have velocity, minimum and maximum velocity. What that means is this: when you strike the pad soft, how loud do you want the pad to be? And the minimum velocity is how soft the pad will respond from 0 to 127 when you hit it soft. The maximum velocity is how loud it will be when you hit it loud. And how it gets from soft to loud has already been defined for you when you set up your curve in the global. Now we have a dampen function. A dampen function is a really interesting thing, and it works in two different ways. When you're dealing with FSR, it notices the change of pressure, that you're putting pressure on the pad. Next we have the dampen. Dampening is an interesting feature because we've created a special dampen function for FSR, which has always been with alternate mode and CAT products, meaning that when you turn on dampen mode on the FSR, it notices when you put pressure on the pad, and when it sees that pressure, it dampens the note. But we also have another special feature that you can actually dampen a piezo pad. And that's something that was never done before, and we'll show you and we demonstrate that if you assign a piezo pad to dampen and we set up some parameters, you could also dampen piezo pads. Next we have gate time. Gate time is how long a sound lasts before it's told to stop. Unlike a piano, when you press on a key, it knows to stop when you release the key. Every strike on the drum is fast, so we have to give it a time. And the times are in milliseconds. And we have all different choices going all the way down from 100 milliseconds, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, etc. And then we have one that's called infinite, which means that no note offs are sent when you want it to just roll and all the sounds blend into each other. We have a roll mode, which means that when it notices that you're playing fast, it will stop sending note offs until you stop playing, and then a note off is sent out. And then we have latch, which is used in sequencing programs or to control loops, like if you're using Ableton Live and you want to start and stop a loop. The latch works that when you strike the pad once, it's a note on, you strike it again, it's a note off. And that's how the gate works. Then we have the sounds. And what the sounds function does is control how the slots work. If I assign one sound into slot 1, and this is assigned to one sound, it acts like a normal trigger converter. You get one sound when you strike the pad. When I start moving through the screens and sounds, I can get 2 sounds per pad. And I can have 2 sounds where the second sound comes in hard, or the second sound comes with a medium hit, or the second sound comes with a soft hit. And I can do this with 2 sounds. I can do this with 3 sounds. And I can do this with 4th sound. So you can start having velocity shifting going on between the sounds by just finding how many sounds you want, which means that if I had 4 sounds that I wanted to control, I would assign 4 different sounds in the slots, slot 1, 2, 3, 4, with the sounds that I wanted. And then how I wanted those sounds to come in would be controlled by in the sounds function. And then finally, I can have 4 sounds at once, meaning I can play chords, and the alternate mode, alternate sounds, the heart of the instrument, where you can have alternating note patterns on any pad, and that's where the name alternate mode came from. Those are the sounds function. Next we have something called sound pad switch by. And what that means is that if I have sound 2 and it says 1B, that means that if 2A has one sound assigned to slot 1 and one sound assigned to slot 2, it will play one of those two sounds depending on if there's pressure put on, in this case, 1B. What does this mean? Why would I do this? Imagine that you're having an FSR pad and now you're playing on a rim shot. If you're playing the rim shot by itself, you'd want it to be a rim shot. But if you're resting your hand on the head and you're clicking on the rim, you would want that to be a side stick. So now you can control rim shots and side sticks. And it can be used in lots of other ways, creative different ways of alternating sounds by putting pressure. Again, this is one of the super features of FSR, and only FSR products can do this. The hi-hat. Basically, the hi-hat is controlled on inputs on the hi-hat input pad. So it says not allowed because that's done on 7, where we can input number 7 is dedicated for the hi-hat controller, and pad number 8 is dedicated to the hi-hat pad itself. So why would I need a switch mode? Well, let's say that I have an FSR pad and I have a rim that has a sensor on it, even a piezo sensor on it. Normally, when I would strike the rim, I would get a sound, let's say a rim shot sound. But let's say that I wanted to get a side stick sound. Well, I can. When I assign the switch by, and let's just say that 2B is the actual FSR, when I lean on 2B and it sees pressure on it, 2A will switch to the second sound in the slot, which would be the side stick. So now you can get a rim shot and a side stick on the same input by simply putting pressure on the FSR pad, which is called switched by. Now we have the hi-hat, and you'll notice that it says not allowed. That's because the hi-hat function is controlled by input number 8. That's where you assign your different kind of hi-hat modes, general MIDI hi-hat and hat note mode, controller stuff. We'll get into that when we actually start programming these pads. Chick type. We have two different chick types. Normally, the chick is controlled by how fast you're moving the pedal up and down. But because we have an E-hat pedal, we can assign the trigger input to have its own trigger on the A input, and you would simply control that to trigger. But most people would just keep it at control, and the chick, the velocity, is all controlled by how fast you move the pedal. And interesting enough, when you're using drum software such as Addictive Drums or BFD, you don't even have to have the DITI assign the chick and the splash. That can all be done by the software program itself, and you just keep this set to off in the splash and chick settings. The foot controller. The foot controller, when you have a foot controller signed in, your hi-hat pedal, you can send out controller number 4, volume, pitch bend, off, and controller number 1. So you have some variations in what you can do with that foot controller pedal. And then you can edit and name your kit. And you change, of course, as you can see, the cursor is moving to the left and right. You can go up and down and change the character, and that's how you name your kit. Finally, every single kit has its own volume, so the DITI acts as a MIDI mixer. You can assign a program change that controls the sound that you want to get on your drum module. You can give it a bank change, and today's machines require 2 numbers for a bank change, an LSB and an MSB, and the channel that you want the program change to go on. And we're back to the beginning. Whew, we just finished the kit edit screens.